Hi, welcome to our last lecture in which we will go over the bits and pieces that we have seen through the course and how they all tie together. After which we will think a bit about what is going to come next. We began by saying that, right, our applications for the 2020s is a basic web app which is browser-based multi-user app that relies on basic browser interactions. And now we can say what those interactions are. They are basically get, post, and redirect. Get when you are retrieving resources, post to make changes, and redirect for various kinds of composition. That's where we began. The next observation we had was, we said that programs, which is how we normally think, versus web apps, the distinction is between how exactly you do input, output, and manage data. Now we can actually add one more thing to this, which is now we can add navigable application state. This idea is completely new and we could not actually mention it in the beginning at all because it is such a strange thing that in the normal world of navigable application, not application data, application states, that we could not really say much about it. Traditional command line programs we know very well, straightforward input, process, output. GUI programs similar, local file data, and now we can say no such idea, right? No notion of independently accessible application state. But apps execute as a web service, keep data on remote machines, input via URL parameters, and output via HTML and JavaScript. These are in some sense technological achievements in parts, but in parts they are not so different from what used to go before. It is the distribution across the pieces that starts making the real difference, right? We also said that we will look at app development very step by step from a simple command line program to a modern app. And so we started with a command line app which purely focused on logic. Then we learned all the basic ideas from the ground up, right? How protocols work, how DNS works, how HTTP works, and so on. And then we pulled them all together to achieve what is shown here, which is how to execute as a web service in accept input, render, output, etc., etc. And then lastly, we did the addition of multiple users. The core, of course, is the app idea, and we showed a few examples of where app ideas come from. Many of them are computerized versions of activities people already do. But once you computerize these activities, it's easy to start thinking of newer and newer features. Eventually, as we get used to it, some new generation of people come up who have build on what has gone before. Their imagination works differently, and then we really start seeing the effects of what the previous set of people had done. Taxi companies began as a kind of hailing, so to speak, but now it is much more than that because we can coordinate. For example, there are other taxi companies that do, for instance, ride sharing and things like that, right? All of it happens in a very convenient way. And in the case of our application, the starting point was very simple scenario that for every joint expense, one person pays, and at the end of the month they get a report. In the actual application we did not even have a notion of a period or a month or anything like that. We just said, however many expenses you have until now, here is the distribution. So in some ways we simplified even more than what this scenario called for. and we can leave complicated scenarios for much later. Several people, few roommates, deferred payments, etc. etc. The core idea is start simple and evolve. Now, it took us quite a bit of time, largely because the technology that surrounds the web, when you are not familiar with it, has too many moving pieces. And so in the end, the actual application logic was split just in two places, basically. We have here the core expense report piece, which is to get the sums partly by doing the work in the database, then convert that set into a language processable object, and in the language do some of the calculations, report the result. So in some sense, the entirety of the rest of the app is a decoration around this handful of basic ideas of storing and doing some processing. The thing to remember is that's because this is your first app. Once the pieces are in place, right, then you might look at a framework. For example, something called Spring Boot exists, right, which packages most of the things that we have done, though not all of them. And but there is a price to pay. The packaging comes with a lot of complexity because it is a very general application that works in a lot of places. In comparison, our app is barely even crosses 1000 lines and still gets a lot done. So we have managed to keep our app extremely simple and yet demonstrate all the pieces that are necessary to understand what a web app actually does. One point we made at the very beginning is to have a minimum viable product. The observation was that when software was new, people tried the plan then build. But then eventually we learned that software should be grown, not built, right? We start very, very small. In fact, you start with something crude that works. And we saw it at every stage of the development that we have done. We always build very small pieces, understand just JSP, understand just databases, understand just how to dump the databases, understand how to take databases, then HTML, do something slightly better, and so on. That way, at every point, some piece was working and we were able to build on top of each other as we went through the course. Look at just how small our current app is. It has only one group of friends. There's just about usable. It's reasonably usable, but just about. It has the core ideas of login, logout. So you could actually use two different browsers and log into the same app. There's no problem now. We also added external login because that is a very common experience nowadays, and it is also a key example of how service composition happens, which is important to learn. We looked at elementary security and what happens when you don't have it, right? We needed to encrypt the username, otherwise we could hack the system. Then we saw some aspects of internal design, that is how to design our database tables, especially managing identities, internal and external, internal ID and external ID. Internal ID and external ID. We also have all the basics, the servlets, web XML, all these elementary pieces. And in our small app, we have constructed almost the entire small parts of what one might call a web framework. For example, let us talk about say what is called a router, right? Router is something that maps URLs to their eventual service. We did something quite strange by the standards of normal Java programs. That is, we took web XML, which actually unroutes in some sense. Instead of mapping all these things to different classes, we map all of them to the same class. And then inside the class, we did the dispatch. We actually took this up and then dispatched it accordingly. There is a scale at which doing dispatch in this style can become quite difficult, but there are quite a few cases in which people unnecessarily use whatever it is that their frameworks give them and make things vastly more complicated than they really have to be. There is a place for configuration based designs like this, but you can build them after some experience instead of having to get all the pieces working correctly to begin with. So that's our router. Database connectivity, we haven't actually done such a great job because we connection pooling can be done far more with a much better way than we did it, but nonetheless it is enough to illustrate the basic idea. So ConnectDB, here we have some amount of connection sharing. There are better ways to do it in Tomcat servlets, etc. that you can eventually look it up. And so that we have dealt with connections. We have dealt somewhat with cookie management. So we did our these three set user cookie, right? We have our 3 cookie methods. So cookie management, set user cookie, expire user cookie, etc. And then we also have get value, I think. Yeah, get value from cookie. So we have get value from cookie. That's the core of cookie management. We have elementary validation, very, very elementary. We just look at some of the parameters and check whether they are, very simple forms of validation. Nonetheless, it is validation. And some basics about login, logout, where to store it, check the validity of a user, check valid user. Both somewhat efficiently by using the session, and if the session fails, then go to the database and get stuff from there. Along the way, we also looked at some of the necessity of prepared statements. We demoed examples where if you don't use things like prepared statement and filter your input carefully, your database can become full of junk. And the application itself, of course, there's very little logic. Most of it is in one function, and the other is by and large, retrieval. So what are all the registered users, register a new user, very simple database operations. Following the philosophy we had talked about earlier, we grew our app by testing small programs to understand various libraries. For example, servlet, JSP, database, loggers, their interaction with servlets, HTML, CSS, etc. We built independent pieces, then combined them. First, just database IO, then Java and JSP, HTTP protocol elements, and so on. We spent quite a bit of time understanding the nuances of URLs and methods and all the headers and so forth of HTTP. The result is an app which is remarkably small, considering that it demonstrates quite a few of the techniques involved. It's about 800 lines, 100 lines of Tomcat and Log4 config languages, 4 very similar JSPs with some amount of CSS, and then some SQL and SQL queries. We built a trivial login service, which is also very small, but between the two of them, they show you quite a bit of what constitutes a web application. And the small size is in the end deceptive, because it took a long time to understand why the pieces are the way they are and to get some idea of the rules of various languages. Along the way, we looked at a lot of failures that arise, bugs, how to repair bugs, where to find the logs. All of this is knowledge you have to build up about the environment that you work in, which is one reason why people specialize so much in one environment. And what I would like to remark here is that while you can become an expert at one environment, it is almost a necessity to be on the lookout for ideas that are on the horizon, largely because those ideas become popular because they solve a problem. The crucial thing is not the solution, the crucial thing is always the problem. You have to develop a feel for, are there sufficiently many irritating features in the setup that you are using that you'd rather not have to deal with them. That irritation is a root cause of much of the progress. To give you an example, the general frustration with something called JEE led to a technology that became famous under the name Ruby on Rails, which said that for many simple applications, there is no need for so much elaborate configuration. You should just be able to follow standard patterns which are already baked into the software, and so creating new applications becomes really, really simple. Another example is the so-called Node.js, which was created because certain kinds of programming, especially related to the real-time web, were much easier using the technological piece that the inventor created. So each of these new technologies, you have to always try to understand that there is a new idea and what problems it is solving. Then you can know whether it is relevant to you, interesting to you, and so forth. So having arrived at this point, what is the future of our application? We can do many features, right? Groups of users, error handling scenarios, partial payments, and you could even actually integrate with the payment gateway and finish the payment exchange issue right there and then. You can also develop the same app to be useful on mobile phones. Let's go through the core technologies that we have visited in all this work. We now have an idea of how HTTP works. How does HTTP work? And really on top of DNS and TCP. So you have to have some idea of how the packets are wrapped inside one another and taken apart. And we have even seen the use of programs like SOCAT to build little gateways and understand what the basic raw HTTP protocol actually looks like. We understood the methods and the key ideas of redirect, post redirect, get, etc., cookies and cache control. So now you understand essentially the core infrastructure that underlies the web, or at least you have a starting idea of many of its dimensions. The next thing we now know is there is such a thing as a web application lifecycle. Analogs of server context, app context will exist in every single technology out there, right? Because the requirement is in the problem. It's only a question of how your technology solves it. That it must solve it is a given. In some situations, you can simplify one or two of these things, but not always. We also now know that the context of the request matters a lot. This word context will keep coming again and again and again in every single software that deals with the web, because the idea is that from the user's point of view, they are interested in how the thread of control moves from the browser all the way to their service. The fact that it is spread among different pieces of software matters not at all. Then the other common idea is the notion of session, which is, as we talked about before, causally related requests, basically. Another important piece was how databases work, how to use them well to spread the work between DB and the application, how to solve problems with uniqueness using things like unique indices, and how to rely on uniqueness to craft proper queries. So the example given was this insert statement, right, that I'm highlighting here, which inserts into the expenses based on the uniqueness of some other table. Using databases well is something that is not well understood among programmers, and you could sort of distinguish yourself by learning those things well. Right. Another piece which we have touched is so-called ORMs, which map from objects in the database to objects in Java. Our ultra trivial ORM, so to speak, right? It's a kind of a joke. Is to represent a database result query directly as a list of maps with some of the typed objects existing in there. That's one of the simplest, most natural object relationship mappings that you could imagine doing. And in fact, we didn't even bother to build any classes or anything, right? We just said we have a bunch of big decimals, we calculate with it, and we're done. So let the problem drive the solution. Don't go about thinking that, oh, Java has objects, therefore I must create objects. No such thing, right? Solve the problem. Perhaps the strangest idea in this entire course is this business of navigable application state and the mismatch between what the user sees and what the server sees, and elements like caching and so forth. One other thing which we touched on, if you remember, at the beginning we did GUIs, and a GUI in Java especially is an utter mess, because the layout and of the Java GUI is just irritating beyond belief. In comparison, by now, right, HTML and CSS have been polished so that creating at least simple spare UIs of the kind that we have done is very, very easy, very reliable, works across all sorts of strange devices. Because a lot of work basically has gone into it, and it's a pretty good design all said and done, at least at this point in time. And so there are several corner cases. We saw this business with implicit button submits and so on. But a lot can be done without touching JavaScript at all. That's quite important for you to know, because you shouldn't, you can get a good product done without understanding JavaScript first. And then, following the philosophy we have said, learn more and more and put those features in your code. Let's see, what other piece have we done? The web browser itself, the browser tools and add-ons and so on, are an entire universe on its own right, which you ought to know very well if you do web apps. I don't know, doing the same on mobile and mobile apps is a whole different world, but a lot has been learned from doing the web browser. So knowing the web browser well, some of the lessons will carry over to these other worlds. Right. A new piece relative to, say, simple applications such as command line and GUI is security, because we are the browser doesn't know anything about the server doesn't know anything about the browser, who's supposed to trust who, and so on, are big issues. So we looked at why we need encryption, we demoed a hack, and then we talked about how to encrypt and how to manage secrets. So that's as far as all the technological pieces that we have looked at. The point of focus, in some sense, beyond the technology, is design issues, which is what is involved in getting distributed applications, what is involved in getting applications implemented that should work over groups of browsers, servers, databases, how to separate out the users. Databases solve a lot of the simultaneous users problem, but in the simple query sets that we haven't really run into the need for transactions, because our transactions are implicit. MySQL with its InnoDB engine and the default database connection already gives you transactions for on a single statement basis, and we haven't needed multi-statement changes at this point in time. But that is sort of because of the simplicity of the application. Otherwise, of course, you will start needing to understand transactions. So that's the summary of the things we have done so far. Next, we will start talking about what it is that comes next. Right. After we have arrived at a basic proof of concept product, the several other issues start showing up, which is importantly performance. I think we looked at web page test once when we looked at browser tools, but I'm not sure. If we haven't, go look up the site called web page test and try to test a web page, publicly available web page, and see what the site shows you. It's quite revealing. Another such site is Google PageSpeed, which is a site that helps you analyze the performance of your site. And there are, of course, greater knowledge of the browser tools. There are also issues like tuning the JVM or whatever technology you are using. It will always need some understanding, tuning, etc. And then understanding it thoroughly enough, invest time in learning tools around the technologies. Don't just blindly try to hack things in without knowing that people have spent a lot of time building tools to make your life easy. As your system grows, becomes successful, and you start building more features, the software engineering concerns start piling up. In particular, there is nowadays people don't build and deploy software in say a few months at a time. They will do so. Some companies claim they do it several times a day, which is true for some types of software, but not all. At least couple times a week is definitely feasible for most types of programming, except perhaps banks and such other very high risk situations. But in general, we know that it is better if we continuously integrate our pieces of software, continuously test and continuously deploy. The greater the time gap between your development and your testing, the more situations where bugs might arise and you'll spend more time fixing them simply because you don't remember what you've done. So you here means, even at a scale of a team, these things work roughly in a similar fashion. Then there are other things to learn there, how to deploy features with what are called feature switches. And then once you start adding feature switches, configuration files and how to deal with them becomes a world in its own right. A significant concern is design for maintainability. You will need things like people around to fix their problems. And typically nowadays, developers and ops team work very closely together at some level at any rate. And in fact, entire companies have been created to solve this problem. For example, once upon a time, people used to build paging systems of their own in case of problems. And now there exists a company called PagerDuty, which automates that particular task. Some other concerns that show up is, at least we have built something very simple, right? One database, one server. At the very least, you need master-slave database pairs so that if one fails, there is another database to get to. And you also need to make sure that you have tested your app with at least a handful of servlet containers like Tomcat and so on, because there will be issues that come up as soon as you multiply these components, and one needs to understand what those issues are, at least at a basic level, before you can make the product real. So that is what comes next as far as the product is concerned. At a larger scale, there are techniques. So for example, we have not talked about bulk data dealing with file uploads and the changes in the HTTP protocols that have happened. We have said nothing much about JavaScript and the browser. Our design was very, very server centric, somewhat older style, and newer designs are more browser centric. What this means is, instead of sending entire web pages to the browser, you will only send the data that is needed to construct much of the web page, the look and feel on the browser side. But fundamentally, the problems to be solved remain the same. You may be doing templates at the browser rather than the server, but they are still templates. A few, what shall we say, techniques have become popular. There are packages called React and so forth. As usual, the people who created those packages saw a problem and are solving it. Whether they are actually useful where so many other people use it is, sometimes there is a overreaction. Something is new, it becomes cool, and people try to use it everywhere. This happens with any technological development. You can avoid it in a lot of cases by analyzing the problem more thoroughly, right? Simple, the base technologies we have are remarkably powerful. It takes a while before your product is significant enough that it needs very flashy features. But people are also excited by new things, so they end up doing them. Another set of techniques that we haven't talked much about was what is called the real-time web, with things like WebSockets and XHR and newer HTTP protocols and a few other things that are there. Video is increasingly integrated in a lot of places, and soon I think people will start having remote video sessions, not just chatbots. Plus, there is the perpetual need for scaling techniques, right? This is some of the new techniques and technologies that we will encounter in the future. Now, beyond these techniques and technologies is the much larger ecosystem of applications. For example, virtually all applications depend on search to become popular. So you need to understand something of how search works and what search engine optimization really is. Mostly, the search engine people will tell you that they try to reward honesty. And this is by and large true. If your if your app or your site or whatever is honest and interesting, it will eventually start drawing traffic. Attempts to boost traffic by buying links, etc., search engines try to do their best to not get gamed, and so sooner or later people pay the price. Although until the search engine adapts to whatever techniques are invented by the SEO people, you will benefit perhaps for a limited amount of time. But by and large, you do simple things right, and the search engine will treat you well. It's useful to know how advertising works, both on a technological basis as well as on the market side of it, whether it is effective or not. All of these are very large topics, of course, but passing acquaintance with them is necessary for most of us. And there are popular books and famous websites like Search Engine Land and so on, which do a pretty good job of explaining these things. Right. Now, widening our scope even further, we can talk about what are some of the foundational philosophies that come next. One philosophy which underlies the designs that we have seen is called REST. It is also an architectural style and a somewhat philosophical take on what distributed software, distributed applications should be like. The key conceptual idea there is that you can think of the state of the server and the state of the browser in the following way. that when a browser visits a server, it transfers the server state or a representation of the server state to the user. And when the user changes their own browser state, they are transmitting that state to the server. So it's a continuous exchange of the representations of states. The thesis of the person who spelled this out correctly, Roy Fielding, is a excellent thesis, plus in general a well written document that is worth reading. A related idea has this somewhat bizarre acronym. It's called hypermedia as the engine of application state. What this means is that the way we use redirects, and also something we didn't do much of, which is documents with embedded hyperlinks, you can compose applications. More importantly, what this means is that one does not need, say, a special application for banks, a special application for stores, a special application for search. The browser and the web documents serve as a common engine to tie all these things together. Most of these ideas are spelled out in the literature around Fielding and some of the more academic writings around the web. It's useful to know these things because they underpin much of the thinking that goes on into applications that fit well with the web. Another sort of philosophical level discussion is about databases. We learn about ACID databases, but there's another style of databases, and nowadays textbooks have slowly started to get updated. It's called BASE, which is a style of databases that does not require, that is useful whenever you don't need total consistency. You can many social sites like Facebook or Twitter, for example, don't need to instantaneously guarantee the travel of messages, or that two different people will see the same site at the same time, and in that case they can do different things as far as the architecture of the site is concerned. Another philosophical matter is interaction design. There are textbooks like About Face and some others which are also well worth reading. So these things tell you how to grow your knowledge further in this area. Okay, that is really what I wanted to talk about today. I will close with a few asides on technological matters, because they are pragmatic decisions that you need to make when you build a piece of software. So I'll mention a few things, and then our course will come to a close. Let's take a look at Java, which we have used in this course. The major pro of Java is that it's absolutely everywhere. That is, there is virtually nothing for which Java doesn't already have a library, so to speak, right? So you can focus on reusing Java libraries and working on just the part that you need. The JVM itself is a very, very solid architecture. It's 25 years or year old now, and the maturity shows. Plus, answers to all basic questions are readily available on the net, and knowledgeable people are available. So those are the strong pros. The cons are that the language itself is tedious and irritating, and the libraries are overly capable sometimes, but you can learn to live with it. It's also a bit of a resource hog, and in many cases, once you acquire enough experience, you can figure out how to do things more efficiently by using other technologies. But for most new people, it's perfectly fine. It's important to learn the JVM tools well. The language itself is growing, evolving. And then there are new languages like Kotlin, which are a JVM language, which is a good JVM language, which is officially the development language of Android. And you should be able to use it in your projects without much fuss. What are the alternatives? There is Go, which is especially suitable for infrastructure products. It comes from the C Unix tradition and isn't really built for the same kinds of enterprisey applications, so to speak, that Java gets used for. But as with all languages, you can do anything with any language, more or less. It does have a far more lightweight runtime, and it generally tends to be very quick to react to new web standards and such, given that Google is the primary source of the language. Another very interesting technology that I really think is nice is a language called Elixir, which runs on top of the Erlang virtual machine, which is very useful for real-time products and very high availability products. A lot of the hassle of reliability is much less with Erlang, simply because it was built by Ericsson, which is a phone company which has been, phone companies have traditionally been the ones with the most rigorous availability requirements. Another such alternative is Node.js, which was also, like I said, designed for real-time IO type activities. Its key attraction is that the same language gets used on the server and the browser. Just remember, if you happen to use Node.js, type checking is really important as your code becomes larger, so you should prefer TypeScript to JavaScript. PHP, which is an old workhorse of a language, is very easy to get started with, but it does tend to get plagued by security issues. Its defaults have tended to be permissive. I don't know what the situation is like lately, but last I looked, it didn't seem like much has changed. So you need to set it up carefully. Of course, that shouldn't worry you exactly. It's in use in quite a few significant places, and you can do good things with it. There are other languages, if you like, Python, Ruby, etc., have mature tooling ecosystems, but they are, in some sense, especially Python is very much a general purpose language. Whether or not a particular web related thing will be supported changes from time to time. For example, HTTP2 support is not all that great, if I remember correctly. In any case, it doesn't really matter. You can always, you can also go the other way around, which is, for many simple applications, you can just use cloud services. So Google Firebase is a pretty interesting product, is a pretty interesting platform for many simple products, and there are probably tons of things like Google Firebase. Once we go looking, you will find them. Cloud databases, log search engines, etc., are widely available. Of course, I'm joking about avoiding work, right? You just develop expertise in something else instead of in the local technology, and you will become dependent on some of the service providers, which can be painful. But if you are launching a 1 or 2 person product, by all means use things like Firebase. Ultimately, how do we choose? So if your product fits a niche for which the technology was designed, choose a technology whose libraries solve the problems in your area. That is by far the most critical decision making principle. But for general web apps, just choose anything you like. Makes no difference. If you are happy developing your product, your customers are happy, eventually you will get money to fix whatever problems that arise. Pay attention to continuous integration, testing, performance. Read the OWASP sites, basic security advice, maintain backups, right? All that said, great product will triumph over everything else. So that's really the final thing that matters. Okay, so we are done. Let's I guess maybe we will do some more courses along these lines. I don't really know at this point, but I hope it was an interesting course for you to follow. Thank you.